God bless. This is NFL Moneyball, brought to you by NFL-ESP.com or NFL Extended Strategic Principles.com. I am your host, Mark Anthony DeBello. You can find me at markanthonydebello.com. And for more information on this program and other things all regarding the NFL and Major League Sports, you can click on the Sports tab on my website at markanthonydebello.com. To begin, we're going to keep this program to a half an hour. As the prior two, there'll be a video montage playing, give you a few things to look at while you listen, hopefully and prayerfully, and I hope that you listen. I am trying to get distributorship, although, we've only had a handful of listeners sometimes over 20 or 30. It's just not my thing to really distribute this widely on the World Wide Web, but I do want to get a record of the thoughts and input and insights that I have, prophetically from God, prayerfully from Him, but also, analytically and strategically from research and data I've done, with NFL-ESP.com, and then as we usually do in the second half of this program, cover things from a predictive or investment side to those who have interest in that, and even including those who have interest in fantasy sports and fantasy football, which is really no different, to be honest, than what's going on in a city out west in the state of Nevada. And certainly, a lot of the principles that I share here can be implemented and used to, to profit and to improve your success in those types of leagues. So I'm not going to put a lot of energy into this program. Been traveling, was in L.A., where I recorded the NFL program, NFL Moneyball in Week 5. I'm going to go over that week a little bit, discuss a couple of games, and then go on to the predictions here for the upcoming week, and again, some seasonal things. I'm posting a lot of, not a lot, but a new blog on a website called Sidelines, which again now you can tab through my website by clicking on the media tab, and have some postings elsewhere. But in case a person wants to read, what I'm speaking here, I'm going to write it down, certain things or articles or just thoughts and insights. So anyway, going back to Week 5 now. Started the week on Thursday night, humbling myself by thinking the Vikings could keep the game closer against Green Bay with the power spread, which was up close to double digits at one point. But again, without Bridgewater, Minnesota is a lackluster team, and again projected, especially with Adrian Peterson in court, projected to be fourth in that division. And again, that division from top to bottom is still, apart from Minnesota, let's say it was in the basement, it's basically a three-way battle between Detroit. I had given a slight edge to Chicago and Green Bay. Chicago's lost a couple of games, at least one by NFL ESP standards, Buffalo in Week 1 that they shouldn't have lost, and then they went on and lost to Carolina, which was actually predictable. Consulted with Coach a couple times, Coach Trestman, that is, of the Bears this week. Still can't get him to see all the vision of how to improve his team, but I think you're going to see the Bears go from 2-3 to 4-3, and maybe even 5-3 pretty quickly here before they get to New England and Green Bay. They go New England bye week, then Green Bay, and that's where NFL ESP can really strategize and analytically help the Bears do better. But they're playing Atlanta this week, and that should be, it's listed a power spread of -3 and in Atlanta, which is basically a pick'em game. But even if you don't use, as I explained to Coach NFL ESP strategy, you can use simply GMC, which is Game Management Coordinator strategy, and that's just really making your points, your possessions, and your yardage more productive. I mean, one coach can go 99 yards and get no points, but let's say, failing on a fourth down or missing a field goal, versus another coach who can go just 1 yard more and go 100 yards and get 8 points out of it. So those types of basic strategy decisions, as I explained to Coach Tressman, supersede things like turnovers and an unclean team. And when I say unclean, as I explained to Coach, the Bears are an unclean team, and the fact that they have, and it's basically these 4 components: penalties, missed kicks, drops or drop passes, and turnovers. So those 4 total together makes for a team to be clean or unclean. Typically, most every team that wins a Super Bowl is a clean team. They have no drops, they're not missing field goals, they're not having turnovers, and they're not having a lot of penalties. They're a really professional, sleek, streamlined-looking group of warriors, 22 at a time, 11 on each side of the ball. And even in an organization as a whole. But anyway, so the Bears are a quote-unquote sloppy or unclean team, but again, as I explained to Coach, that can be overcome, and especially turnovers, which is the most determinant factor in the outcome of a game, second only to coaching basic strategy decisions and the productivity. As I explained maybe in another earlier episode here, that if you are going to, let's say get 300 yards and 21 points a game, which is basically, let's say, the NFL average, your 300 yards can be 21 points. It could be as many as 24 points with 2-point conversions, which not enough coaches, again, are doing, and that we're going for fourth downs, which, again, not enough coaches are doing. The pace of the game, if you're a power spread underdog, you want to slow down the game. If you're a power spread favorite, you want to speed up the game, run more plays. Again, most coaches don't do that. I even saw Coach Belichick make a couple mistakes with New England, and I'll get to New England real quick here after I speak about this. And he was our, sort of the number one ranked coach with regards to using power spread or NFL ESP data, and even he's been, failing, if you will, or not succeeding in maximizing his team's productivity. So having said that, again, as I have explained, and it's more detailed than I'm explaining here, but basically if we looked at those 4 attributes, starting with a quarterback, home field advantage actually, 2.5 points to 4.5 points, and then quarterback QB time or QB productivity, and you saw that especially on this last week's Monday night game with Russell Wilson, how much time he spent in and out of the pocket, extending the play, and certainly with rushing yardage. I mean, that's what wins games in the NFL. Quarterbacks who most can do that. New England ended up doing it in the system or the model that they're built with just solid line play and Brady staying still in the pocket and being flat-footed and having time to throw. So the second part of that is the receivers breaking off their routes. It's the most productive reception or receiving plays are done in that zone, that spiritual area outside of the route tree. If you imagine drawing a square out 10 yards, you're going to draw a straight line that goes down 10 yards and probably out 5 yards. And now it's after that, corner or angle that you draw on the chalkboard, it's that after that final point of that 5 yard out, when the receiver has to break off the route, that's where games are won and lost. So, everybody's route tree is pretty similar. Everybody can, pattern a pass play and defend it. You'll see most interceptions are done, the more productive ones, by defensive backs who are running in the pattern that the receiver would run. They're not backpedaling. They're not coming up on the ball. They're starting out at the line of scrimmage and running the same pattern or anticipating the pattern that the receiver is going to run and getting to the ball first, much like a receiver. This is how to be the most productive in getting a turnover or playing DB. So, again, to that end, the most important aspect nowadays for a passing game in this quote-unquote passing league of the NFL is to have a quarterback who can extend time in the pocket and break off a play, and then have a receiver who can break off a route and improvise. If you, again, watch the Seattle game, it was just like 11-11, just a pickup game out there at many points. The line had no organization in blocking for Seattle. They were just out there as Russell Wilson just ran around 1 against 11 and looked for his receivers or his running backs. So, again, that's the productivity of the X's and O's, the most productive aspect of it, play design or what's going on with plays. And, again, that's, number 3 on the list. Number 2 is turnovers, still determine most every game because all coaches' basic strategy decisions are the same. So, again, turnovers, interceptions, fumbles, and then whether the return for quote-unquote pick six is number 2 on the list. And, again, number 1 is coaching basic strategy decisions. And, I mean, there's a lot this week, and I'll get to this in part 2 of the program, touchdown or so, power spread underdogs, and these teams only have a 25% chance of winning this game going in. They're going to have to make some aggressive, is the word we always use, power spread decisions. So, anyway, having said that, some of these teams are going to, they're not being as productive as they can be, and certainly, costing themselves in the one-loss column. So, again, as we look back now to last week, because we're about 12 minutes in on the program, and I want to devote 15 minutes to getting to the predictions for Week 6. In Week 5, our number 1, and actually, you know what, I'll run down the top of the list here, but our 95% accurate investment for those we're going to invest in best pick so far this season, and probably will be all season long, was New England over Cincinnati. We've always projected that Cincinnati is an overrated team. We knew New England was embarrassed and again, was our preseason Super Bowl pick, and is finally, well, not finally, but working through the process, which Coach Belichick is very good at, of getting a team better from start of the season to the finish. The Patriots walloped the Bengals as we predicted. You heard on this program it was going to be a clear-cut victory for New England, and it was. So as far as the other games go, running down real quick, Carolina-Chicago, we had mentioned Carolina would probably end up winning that game, that they're better rated than most people think. Cleveland and Tennessee, we projected Cleveland. They had a great comeback victory and won, and again are still shorting themselves by not starting Johnny Manziel. I believe wholeheartedly they can improve enough to win that division. The Rams and Eagles, I think we said it would be pretty close, and it was. Giants and Eagles, this one could have went both ways. We were leaning toward the Eagles. Toward the Falcons and Giants, and the Falcons ended up losing to the Giants, but not surprisingly. But those, again, are two bad teams. Do not believe that the NFC East, who has a good record now, is that much of an improved division because they're not. Investment-wise, we projected Tampa Bay would keep it close to New Orleans, and they did, almost winning that game. Houston and Dallas, we were pretty off on this game. We thought Houston would be – they kept it close, which we projected. We just thought Houston might win it straight up, but they did cover the quote-unquote power spread. So that was a correct assessment. Surprisingly, Detroit lost to Buffalo. That, again, wasn't something we expected. But Detroit is already showing under Coach Caldwell, who I think improved in discipline, that they're being too overly conservative, which he always is and has been, and is not a very good coach when it comes to being aggressive or understanding the power spread. The Ravens and Colts, we like the Colts. And they ended up covering the power spread. Pittsburgh and Jacksonville, we mentioned. I think we thought that there was a toss-up, a game we wouldn't touch, and it looked kind of that way right to the end. The Jags, keeping it close, but they're a bad team. Denver and Arizona, we thought Arizona would keep it close. They did not, so we were incorrect there. We knew that it would be close with Kansas City and San Francisco. It was, as Kansas City covered the power spread. Another one we projected here was that San Diego would have an easy time covering the power spread against the Jets, and they did that. And then, of course, we mentioned the Patriots against the Bengals. And then on Monday night, didn't have a real strong opinion because I thought that game could have went both ways. And again, it looked that way. It almost went both ways. So we were very accurate again last week, as we've been blessed to be virtually every week with regards to prophecy, predictions, and prognostication. So as we cross the halfway point of this program, let me get to week 6 and some insights here. As we've already did most of our studying with regards to those who might be interested in investing. And again, the NFL ESP comes to us pretty naturally on how to strategize a game and analytically how to see a game. And I am fortunate and blessed enough with the godly intelligence He gave me to see games the way other people don't see them, and have the vision and anticipation to see ahead. And and get data and have done research over, honestly, since I was 8 years old, which is 45 years, and definitely refined this program in the last 15 to have it be highly accurate, and that NFL ESP data, as it's supposed to apply to head coaching basic strategy decisions, really does help investors or those who, want to project or predict a game based on what we can, again, call the power spread. So coming into week 6, we didn't study as hard as usual, but again, can certainly give you some insights here. The first game was going to be the Thursday night game. Indianapolis is playing Houston. I really would rather probably not invest in this game. Initially, my thoughts were to lean toward Indianapolis by my data. I know they're a better team than Houston. I still think Houston can get the wild card in that division as we projected during the preseason. But I do know that the public is all investing in Indianapolis, and that spread, power spread, went from 1.5 up to 2.5 up to 3, and may even, I believe, lean toward 3.5 by game time, in which case you'd want to invest in Houston. But since there are two sides, in my own opinion at least, to that game, then I wouldn't invest in it. You don't need to. There's other better opportunities. Going on to Sunday's games, Denver is playing the Jets. They're giving about a touchdown. I know that almost 90% of people are investing in Denver. I can hardly blame them. So you would want to be on the house, quote-unquote, house side and play the Jets. But how can you play the Jets? And if the Jets can't even come close against San Diego last week, then how can they even get close against Denver? So, again, this is a two-sided game that I wouldn't invest in. You don't need to. I wouldn't be surprised if Denver wallops them, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Jets, find a miraculous way to keep it close. Again, there's other and better opportunities. The next game is Pittsburgh against Cleveland. Cleveland's at home. Again, we projected Pittsburgh to basically come last in that division. Baltimore and Cleveland battling for the title, and then Cincinnati third and Pittsburgh in fourth. So I would definitely take Cleveland at home. And again, if they can ever find a way to get Johnny Manziel in that lineup, I think they're going to see, and certainly they need Josh Gordon back, but if they can ever get Johnny Manziel in that lineup, they're going to see a dramatic improvement. They think they're doing good now. They could really be doing great. Tennessee is playing Jacksonville. We're going to project mildly here Jacksonville, only because they have to at least win one game this season. They almost beat, or I think they beat Tennessee once last year, or almost beat them twice. Tennessee is not a good team. They've got a quarterback problem with Jake Locker. And if there's ever a spot for Jacksonville to win, and to win outright, it's this week. If they don't, then they won't. And that's probably for the rest of the season. I don't know their schedule in front of me, but again, that's a really poor team. The next game up is the Bears, who I've already mentioned, against Atlanta. I spoke with emailed and texted Coach a couple times this week. I'm sorry, just emailed. And this is the Bears' season for the Bears. Atlanta, I don't have their schedule in front of me. I don't think that's a very strong division, and I don't think they have, they can get past Carolina or New Orleans to get to a wild card, so they're really just playing out the season already as far as I'm concerned. The Bears, however, again, we project have a real chance to be there at the end of the year, and I think could even, if they can win this game, can definitely get to 5-3 pretty quickly here with a couple of mediocre opponents coming up. And so I think the Bears should be able, to win this game. And if they don't, again, I love Coach, but that's going to be trouble for the Bears. This is actually the crossroads game of their season, believe it or not, as far as the NFL ESP data goes. Like Green Bay is playing Miami, in Miami giving 3.5 points. That's too many points to be giving Miami. Miami, I don't believe, is a very good team. But again, I know the public likes to play Green Bay. They're getting behind Green Bay again now. But if Green Bay does win, I can see them winning this game by 3 and not covering the power spread. Again, I don't like Miami enough to invest in them, but I definitely wouldn't play Green Bay either. Detroit is playing Minnesota and giving about 3. There's some injuries on both sides, Calvin Johnson, Teddy Bridgewater. If I had to lean toward a team to invest in here, you would want to invest in Minnesota. But again, without Bridgewater or not knowing his condition, although I believe he's probably going to play, definitely without Calvin Johnson, you'd probably want to lean toward Minnesota. They're certainly not the better team than Detroit. But again, both these coaches, as far as I know, are pretty conservative and don't follow NFL ESP strategies or, maximize their point productions. They basically play it like most coaches play it, so it's really just involves turnovers and how turnovers are going to influence that game, and it's very difficult without getting, too deep and again to this broadcast how one can predict turnovers. Although NFL ESP can, we can. Again, I mentioned this briefly before about how fumbles have a more random nature but can be predicted because every 50-50 proposition, this is a spiritual point, every 50-50 proposition ends up at the hands of God. He knows the score. He knows, if it's a coin toss and it's heads 3 times in a row, the odds of it being tails is still 50-50. The coin didn't know what the toss was 3 tosses, prior. However, God does know. And in the end, the score will be 1 billion tosses heads, 1 billion tosses tails. 1 trillion tosses heads, 1 trillion tosses tails. He knows the score. So if you know him as I do and keep these kind of stats, believe it or not, I know the score. But again, that's enough on that game. So moving on to the next game, here I believe is another good investment. This is Carolina getting a touchdown, or it's going to probably go down to 6.5 now because of this injury. Points against Cincinnati. Again, I think Cincinnati is an overrated team. Carolina, I know, is a better team than Cincinnati. And if you're going to be able to get 6.5 or even 7 points, I think that's a very wise investment. Almost as strong a play as New England was last week against Cincinnati. Carolina is that kind of play again this week, but nothing can top New England last week. But again, Carolina is the strongest play of the week here against Cincinnati, and you probably won't even need the power spread, and they can beat Cincinnati at home. And now that I see A.J. Green is hurt, Cincinnati is already beginning to weaken, as has been projected. New England is playing Buffalo. Orton goes to show that that's Kyle Orton, the quarterback I'm speaking of, compared to E.J. Manuel. Although Orton is not, basically a full-time NFL starting quarterback, just that brief improvement in quarterback play helped Buffalo to defeat Detroit and improve them because they're not statistically as bad a team as everybody thinks. And usually we go with something, that's a good, bad, on-off sort of system with regards to teams that we're really hot on, like New England last week. We typically believe if they're on or if they're good, then the next week they're going to be off or they're going to be bad. So although I do believe New England is the better team back on track as most of the public things. I always thought they were a good team. They just got a slow start, and it will probably be the AFC representative, if not a surprising team here that I'm going to mention later on as we near about having 5 minutes left. I would actually invest in Buffalo this game if I had to. I know the public's investing New England. If you don't think you can take Buffalo, then don't take the game at all. It's too much of a moto or a master of the obvious to take New England again this week. The next game is Baltimore and Tampa. We like Baltimore, not by a lot, but I definitely think Baltimore is 6 points better than Tampa. It'll be close, but they're giving 3 points in Tampa, which means they're basically 6 points better. I do think Tampa is actually a 3.5-point power spread home team because the refereeing and the officiating there for years has been very biased for Tampa. So, again, that's either a Baltimore or a pass. The next game, and this was that other AFC team I was mentioning, is San Diego playing Oakland. San Diego was our surprise team this year to perhaps surpass New England. You notice I'm not mentioning Denver in the AFC Championship, but I know San Diego looks very much this week like Detroit did last week, a 7-point favorite. They've been playing some weaker scheduled teams, looking better than perhaps they are. Oakland is coming off a bye week with a new coach, and typically a new coach or a new quarterback off a bye week is a dramatic improvement, and Oakland isn't as bad as people think they are. I don't believe they're the worst team in the NFL. I believe Jacksonville is. So I wouldn't be surprised if Oakland actually covers that game and may well win that game straight up. But that game will go a lot toward determining how strong San Diego is, because I would really like to see San Diego win one more game versus a good team as they did Seattle to know for certain if they can beat New England. I do project them to win that division, though, and the AFC West, but beat New England in the AFC Championship. The next game is Dallas-Seattle. Seattle is not as clean a team as I would like to see, but they're still the most talented team and number one power ranked team on my listing or the NFL ESP.com listing, and I think Dallas, again, is overrated in a weak NFC East, and I think actually you're going to see them come down to earth here, and Seattle, can even probably win through the power spread, which is 8 points, and beat Dallas. I think Dallas is going to find out exactly, and the public's going to find out exactly how weak they are compared to the NFC West and a team like Seattle. Arizona is playing Washington. This game is actual from NFL ESP, and if you looked at certain data that we look at from people out in that city of Nevada, a lot of people are investing in Arizona, and that power spread opened up -2.5, which is a live number, a quote-unquote live number for the house, which means they want you to take Arizona because you're going to be thinking you're laying less than a field goal, which you are, and you got to, they can win by at least a field goal, but that's a live underdog number, just as 6.5 points is. If a team opens up 6.5 or 2.5, you want to take the power spread underdog in that case, and in this case we would probably want to take Washington, especially off a Monday night defeat. I wouldn't bet the ranch on it, but I would definitely invest in Washington if I had to invest. Now, if Palmer is starting and comes back for the Cardinals, then quote-unquote I was going to use the B word. We don't use the B or G word because that's not what we're about. But if Palmer's in, then I would. That's BETS or GAMBLING. I wouldn't invest in this game. I wouldn't invest in it either way. The Giants are playing the Eagles. This should be a close battle between actually, a team that everybody thinks is hot now. The Giants, again, I believe this is a weak team, and I would, if I had to invest in the Eagles. The Eagles are really basically a 4-point home team, and I do believe they are a better team than the Giants. And the last game coming up is Monday night is the Niners against the Rams. The Niners giving 3 or 3.5 points to the Rams at home. Really no opinion on this game. Another game where you can darn well imagine everybody's investing in the 49ers, and you really only need to look at about 4 things as an investor, and that is, one is who is everybody, the public, quote-unquote public, investing in, who are they playing. 2 is think spiritually, who does the house, the people who put out this information. Who do they really want to win? And then 3, just listen to the media. If they're talking good about a team, that team's probably going to do poorly. If they're talking bad about a team, that team's probably going to do well. So just really look at those 3 criteria, and then any data that you have, but you probably don't have the same data. So anyway, that's it for this week. It's week 6 of NFL Moneyball, brought to you by NFL-ESP.com. I am your host, Mark Anthony DeBello, markanthonydebello.com. God bless you.